Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talk with TQ and the Energy Stoners Cafe. Thanks for coming to visit the show. You know how I'm so happy to know that you're here. Tonight, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Cedric Batchateau. He is a doctor of pharmacology, but we talk a lot about natural life and healthy living. Tonight, we're going to talk about hydration, and we're also going to talk about digestion. So let's get on with it. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you for having me, Tony. It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. I love these interviews. They're so healthy.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be good to talk about, we're in the middle of summer, or towards the end actually, and we're having an unusual summer because even though summertime is hot, it's hotter in New York than usual.
Yes.
And I think many people know at this point it's important to hydrate, but not everybody does it, and not everybody sees the importance of it. So maybe you could explain why hydration is so crucial to good health, especially at certain times.
Yeah, great question, Tony. Hydration is something that is actually crucial for our health. And when we're talking about hydration, ideally, I want to focus on water as opposed to the many other beverages that are available out there. I want to focus on water because water is one of the few beverages that your body needs. See, the body doesn't need milk or juice or any of those things. Those can be beneficial, but the body doesn't necessarily need them. However, your body needs water because water is ubiquitous throughout your body. In fact, your cells are about 60% water. The body's about 60% water, but the blood is about 90% water. And what's interesting is the life of the body is in the blood. That's one of my favorite scriptures, right? That tells you that the constituency of your blood really plays a role in the life and vitality of your body. So I think when we talk about thirst, when we talk about the climate or the weather that we're experiencing right now, it is absolutely important that hydration be at the top of the conversation, and hydration with water. Having said that, Tony, I want to say this. You know, we are living in a land of abundance. And what that means is when you're thirsty, the average person has many options to choose from. You know, you can drink beverages, you can drink juices, and unfortunately, many people drink sodas, right? Of course, due to the high sugar content. But I want everybody to remember, your body needs water. Water is what your body needs. When your body or your mind or your brain sends out thirst signals, right? When your mouth is dry, when your lips are dry, it's calling for water. But unfortunately, because we have so many choices and options and varieties, we often make less than ideal choices. So we'll reach for something that may contain some water, but also comes with sugar and other components. But the body needs water. So I just want to harp on that a little bit.
Okay, that's what it's all about. And I like to talk about how people get dehydrated because I've read that a lot of times you could be dehydrated and you don't even know it.
So when we think about dehydration, we often think of the immediate lack of water in our mouth, you know, the dryness in your mouth. That's one part of dehydration. There are many other parts and different ways in which the body will let you know that you do need water. So, you know, real quickly, if you're thirsty or you're dehydrated, usually a swig of water, a cup of water, or a bottle of water will do away with that. But there are other signs that the body will utilize to let you know that you're deficient in water, that you're dehydrated. One of which is simply looking at the color of your urine. Now, I'll ask you this. When you think about the color of urine, what comes to mind if you were to?
Yellow.
Yellow. Okay, so that's what most people would actually say. But interestingly enough, yellow or the color yellow simply represents the amount of solutes or the amount of waste that's been removed from your body. See, the color of urine is actually clear. And so it becomes more yellow and gets this darker color based on how much waste is filtered from your blood. And that's really the function of your kidneys, right? You have two kidneys that work well and they work hard, and they filter about between 120 to 150 quarts of blood. And from all of that blood volume that it's able to filter, it usually removes between 1 to 2 quarts of blood. So that waste that's removed gets actually put in your bladder, stored in the bladder, and then ultimately gets excreted when you urinate. Now, here's the thing: the darker the darker the color of your urine, okay, it means that you could stand to drink a little bit more water. So if you were to drink a lot of water, for example, your urine would appear clearer, right? Because it wouldn't be so concentrated with all of this waste. So that's another way to determine how dehydrated you are based on the color of your urine. So if you see a consistent yellow color, well, that's a sign that maybe you're not drinking as much water. Because if you start drinking water, one of the first things you'll realize is, wow, it's clearing up. And that's something I want everybody to be mindful of.
And I guess you'd also notice that you're urinating a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does take a while for the body to get used to any major or significant changes. I think the golden rule out there is, you want to drink something like 8 glasses of water a day. Though I don't think it's entirely scientific, I do think it's a great starting point, right? The idea being, especially on days that are as hot as this one, keep hydrated. Don't wait until you're thirsty or you experience the dryness of your mouth to then run for water. It's good to have a bottle of water with you, a glass of water with you throughout the day. Take a sip, because, the water does more than just deal with the thirst. It actually helps your cells function. It helps with metabolism. It helps cushion your joints. It helps your spinal cord. It helps everything. It helps with digestion as well and weight loss. So water plays a role in virtually every aspect of your well-being. Thirst just happens to be one of those.
Explain how it helps with digestion and weight loss.
So the process is called hydrolysis, which is a splitting of water. And so I like to think of it like a chemical reaction. Okay, if you have, you've just eaten food and you're chewing the food. So part of that is the physical or mechanical digestion, which starts in the mouth with the physical chewing of the food. And then by the time it slides down your esophagus into your stomach, it enters something called chemical digestion, which is the further breakdown of the food that you consume through the use of hydrochloric acid, which is, the acid that's in your stomach. I like to think of it as lava. If you stick your hand in there long enough, by the time you take it out, you get nothing but bone, right?
Ooh,
and so, yeah. So here's something that's very interesting. You want a strong stomach acid. And the reason you want a strong stomach acid is because you want that stomach acid to be strong enough to break down or digest food rather quickly. So if you ate a piece of chicken, for example, you don't want the chicken to sit in your stomach for 2-3 hours just so that it gets digested and broken down to go into your small intestine. You want that chicken to be broken down within about 45 minutes. So the strength of your stomach acid depends on 2 things. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
It's hydrochloric acid, which are represented by the elements hydrogen and chloride, so HCl. Okay, 2 elements. Now, the hydrogen comes from water, right? H2O. The hydrogen that you find that's part of the hydrochloric acid actually comes from water. The chloride, which is the other component, actually comes from, get this, salt, sodium chloride.
Okay.
So if you have adequate water intake as well as decent amount of salt. I know everybody's afraid of salt. Try, maybe not the typical Morton's or table salt. Try sea salt, something with more minerals on there. They tend to be significantly healthier. But if you have a decent intake of water as well as salt, ideally sea salt, I think you're in a much better position, because then your stomach acid is stronger. And what that does, how that helps with digestion, is that when you're eating foods such as proteins, carbs, or fats, they're able to be broken down fairly quickly. And so that helps you because it allows this broken down food to pass through your small intestine, then large intestine, and then ultimately to be excreted in the bathroom, right? So you want strong stomach acid in order to help with digestion, to facilitate digestion. And the way in which you get strong stomach acid is by making sure you're drinking plenty of water and by also making sure you're getting adequate amounts of salt in your diet, ideally the chloride portion of sodium chloride. And so that's going to allow you to break down foods faster. Of course, that's going to help with your metabolism. That's going to help with digestion. That's all ultimately going to help with weight loss because you're not having food just sitting in your stomach for hours and just sitting there allowing germs and H. pylori and all these microbes to begin to ferment, because that can also lead to things such as heartburn and all these other issues, GERD and all these other things that lead to a whole host of trouble. So you want plenty of water throughout the day, and you want to make sure you get some salt somewhere along your diet, ideally sea salt, just because it's more mineral rich and it doesn't have some of the excipients that your typical table salt has, such as silica. Those things aren't probably the reason why so many people have linked salt with high blood pressure.
Is the silica that causes the high blood pressure?
I believe it is. So regular table salt is not just salt. When we talk about salt, we usually talk about the component, which is sodium chloride.
Right.
But if you actually look at your typical table salt, the young lady with the umbrella, if you actually look at the ingredients, it's got other excipients, it's got additional ingredients there. I think there's dextrose and silica is one of them. And so they're combined in there for different reasons, anti-caking, so it doesn't stick together. But it does have an effect on your person, on your body. Whereas if you were to take something that was just pure salt, I think you find this in a lot of sea salts. I know that's what we consume. You generally just find that they have sodium and chloride. They don't have added ingredients like your typical table salt. They're not cut, if you will. I think the term explains it. It's not cut with other ingredients in there. So I believe it tends to be healthier and it doesn't have the unwanted effect of increasing your blood pressure, but it does have the benefit of making your food taste a little better.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the part I like. I think that also, I know that sea salt is coarser. It's coarse. It's not like that real fine powdery table salt. I don't want to bash on that little girl with the umbrella. They might sue us. But I'll say that sea salt to me tastes better. And actually it almost feels like it's saltier.
Yeah, I
You don't
think
need as
so.
much of it,
I think so, because generally speaking, as I understand, sea salt carries more minerals in there. It hasn't been bleached or it hasn't had its mineral content stripped of it. It's a little bit like it's a little bit like sugar, right? Sugar in its natural state has molasses, it has a brown color, but if you refine it, you get the white sugar.
Right.
So you've removed the molasses and a few other key nutrients in there, and you have this white, finely grained powder, if you will, that's known by everyone and it's everywhere. But the real cane sugar tends to be a little bit more brown. It has more nutrients in there, and so it tends to be a little bit healthier for you than your typical table sugar. So it's kind of like that. The processing of these things yields something that may be more marketable. However, it doesn't necessarily mean it's better for your health.
Interestingly, I find that the raw sugar is sweeter. It's sweeter than the table sugar. And the sea salt is saltier than table salt. And many people don't know that, I'm sure most people know it. Well, maybe not. I don't know most people.
You almost have to taste the two.
You have to taste the two
to be able to tell the difference. Yeah.
And I think it's pretty obvious. Okay, so we've gotten to that, and I'm really curious as to what the signs are of dehydration that most people don't know about. I'm sure people have been dehydrated. There are people that have been so dehydrated they pass out.
Yes.
And so what are the signs or I know there's stomach cramps if you have stomach aches and you
Mm-hmm.
think there's something wrong with your stomach or you might be hungry.
Yes.
It's really dehydration.
Yes.
Can you address that?
Yeah, so that's a great question as far as some of the other signs of dehydration. So we said, what's typically thought of when we talk about dehydration is the dryness of the mouth. But of course, you can also look at the color of your urine to determine whether you need more hydration or not. But here's where we get into chronic diseases or diseases. Your body will let you know in many number of ways that you need more water. So for example, you may have a digestive issue, pain along your sternum or your stomach area due to maybe not enough bile or something, right? You may have something like kidney stones forming, right? And they generally form because there's not enough fluid being filtered from your blood to allow for the waste that's removed to flow smoothly past your urethra and into your urine as you urinate them out. So you have different things, but what the body will do is it'll hold on to the waste, the solute, and so with this little amount of water, it'll try to fit all this waste in this little amount of water, and hence it'll be a hard thing to pass, hence where you have a lot of these stones affecting so many people. So kidney stones may be a sign that you're not getting enough water. You also have feelings of fatigue, right? Because your cells, in order for them to work at their best, they need to make sure that they have enough water, right, for the membrane to maintain its shape, for it to flow throughout your body in the way that it's supposed to. If you're not getting enough water, well, your cells are going to look like raisins, right? Think about, you want cells to look like grapes. You want them to be round and plump and,
Succulent.
exactly. But the less water you drink, especially over a period of time, the more they begin to shrivel up. And so when they shrivel up, they go from looking like grapes to looking like raisins. And so they're not functioning like they should. So you have several ways in which this affects you, one of which is lethargy or a lack of energy. You're feeling sluggish, you're tired. It's almost like, you haven't eaten or something like that, but you have eaten, but you're maybe not drinking adequate amounts of water, right? Or maybe you're drinking other things like juices and sodas and everything, but your body is craving water. So fatigue is another thing. I know headaches are also a common occurrence for those who are chronically dehydrated. The body is letting you know, hey, we need water up here too. So all of these things are start to go off. So I like to say, it's a little bit like, when you're driving a car and you've neglected to take it in to have it looked at or inspected or get the oil change. And so you have all these things popping up on your dashboard, making noises, flashing at you, telling you, hey, it's time. You need an oil change. Your brakes are shot. Your tires are losing air, pressure. So all of these things start going wrong. And so I like to think that scenario is exactly what's happening in the body. Things start to go wrong. And many a times people don't know that, for those, for example, with chronic conditions, they don't know that the fact that they're not drinking enough water contributes directly to their chronic diseases. So for example, if you're not drinking enough water, what happens to your arteries? They tend to narrow a little bit more because your blood volume will generally decrease. And if your arteries are narrowing more, what happens to the overall pressure? It will usually go up because the heart has to pump blood through narrower vessels, and so it's going to have to pump a little bit harder. Well, likewise, when you look at things like blood sugar and diabetes, type 2 particularly, what happens when you have all this sugar that's released in your bloodstream? Well, you need insulin is the main hormone that removes the sugar from the blood, puts it inside of the cells. But you also do need water to help that flow, okay? And so without water helping, blood flow and everything, making sure your cells are getting the sugar that they require, you're going to have a problem because blood may not reach your extremities, things such as your hands, your feet, your toes, right? And that can lead to the development of things like ulcer, which is what happens when you don't have adequate blood flow to a particular area of your body, and so ulcer leads to the rotting or infections taking over and ultimately the rotting of that piece of flesh.
Wow.
And that leads to other problems. So water plays a role in most of these chronic conditions, in whether they become worse, whether they get better, whether your body is able to heal, whether your body is just barely hanging on. Water plays a role in that. But in people, unfortunately, still just think that we are dehydrated when our mouth is dry or we're not able to form enough saliva for whatever reason. But no, all of those things are signs that you need to drink more water. And so we just have to be more mindful of that.
Especially in this heat. And also, it doesn't mean you run to a can of Pepsi. Does that count as hydration?
Well, that's a great point and a great question. So a lot of these beverages contain some amounts of water, but here's what you have to understand. The water that's in the Pepsi is actually required in order to get rid of some of the waste that comes from drinking the Pepsi, right? So the water that's in there will actually be used to try to get that stuff out of you. Okay, so there was this fun experiment we used to do back when I was in high school where we took a pot of, just a pot, put it on the stove, and we took a liter of soda, whether it was Coke or Pepsi or whatever, one of those guys, and we would pour it in and we'd boil it. And you see, once you boil off the water, you're left with this thick, syrupy, molasses type thing, and that's sugar, right? And that syrup is what's going on inside of you. I mean, if you were to tell someone to drink that thick syrup, they couldn't do it, right? But you'd have to dilute it in water, right, to make it fluid, to make it liquidy, if that's a word, and so that you're able to down it in. And so you're gonna need that water that's in the beverage, that's in the soda, just to flush it through your system. So I say, yes, there is some water, and those things do help with thirst, but they will not deal with the underlying cause, which is your body needs water, plain water, because you can live without soda. You can live 100 years without drinking any of these beverages, but you cannot live more than a week, 2 weeks without water.
You could go 2 weeks, huh?
I wouldn't. Well, if you're really good, I'm not saying I can.
Suggest it. 2 weeks is a long time.
Yeah.
I grew up learning that drinking water is good for your skin.
Yes.
If you don't drink water, you wrinkle more.
Yes.
And I know that I've seen it in people. And if you don't drink water, you do have like cramps in your stomach. You think you got stomach cramps, and often it's dehydration.
Yes, and I want to say something regarding the aging and the looks. It's a lot like the analogy of the grapes and the raisins. So when you have adequate amounts of water, your cells or the cells on your skin are going to look a lot like grapes. So they're going to be plump, they're going to be beautiful, you're not going to have all these fine lines. Whereas when you are deficient in water, you're not getting enough water, that means they'll begin to shrivel, and so your skin will look shriveled. You're going to have all these fine lines, signs of aging throughout your face, whereas all you had to do was drink enough water. Now, I always say to people, it's not about drinking a lot of water one day and saying, well, I don't see the results. No, it's about developing a habit, a lifestyle habit that lets your body know that this isn't a fluke or a one-time thing, but it is a consistent lifestyle that you've adopted. And so now it begins to distribute the water rather than hoarding it for emergencies. It begins to distribute it throughout all of your cells and your skin cells, your face, everywhere. And so you're going to see your cells who were shriveled begin to plump up. And so that's going to give you that radiant, youthful look.
A lot of people might think that they're hungry, and they think, oh, I got to eat. That's why I'm eating all this stuff. That's why I'm munching. I'm hungry. When in fact, they're really not hungry. They're dehydrated and they're thirsty. Can't discern the difference between the two. I know I was like that at some point. And a lot of times you can't discern the difference between your hunger and your thirst, or hunger and dehydration.
Yeah.
So that's why I know that a lot of behavior modification techniques, or that when you're starting to get that feeling you want to have those cookies, you want to have those potato chips, drink a glass of water first.
Yes.
Drink the whole glass of water first, and then see how you feel.
Yes.
And then have that stuff afterwards.
You're absolutely right. I think that a lot of times signs of thirst are mistaken for hunger. And a lot of it I try to look at it from a biochemical perspective, what's happening inside of you. If you have insulin that's working efficiently, that's working the way that it should, I think that your insulin response is going to play a role in that little confusion, because if your pancreas is working well, it's going to produce insulin right at the introduction of anything with sugar, and it's going to be able to remove that sugar and place it inside of your cells. And so the cells are going to be able to carry on their function because they've just gotten their energy fix for the day, right? But if you have something going on with your pancreas where maybe the insulin is not as effective at removing, so your cells are going to feel lethargic. They're not going to get the energy zap that they need. And so for many people, even though they've just eaten, they're insulin sensitive, or they're becoming insulin sensitive. Remember, more people today have prediabetes than have type 2 diabetes. So we have millions of people that are pre-diabetic. So for them, they're eating, but the sugar that comes from the foods that they've eaten isn't always going inside of the cells like it should. And so, a couple hours after they've eaten, they feel like, well, I haven't gotten my fix, or maybe I didn't eat enough, so they have to eat again. But what I want to say is that drinking adequate amounts of water actually helps insulin do its job of removing the sugar from the blood and putting it inside of the cells. And it helps the cells function in the way that they need to function, so that you get a greater response to anything that you've eaten throughout the day. And that is, if you've eaten food and you've drank plenty of water, and assuming you're eating foods that are full of nutrients and minerals, especially minerals, your pancreas is going to work the way that it needs to work, and your blood is going to be able to distribute this sugar into your cells, which now have energy. And so you're not lethargic. You're not feeling like, oh wow, let me grab another bite, or let me keep eating, and that ties into obesity, of course.
Well, this has been really an education, and I just want to say thank you for explaining that to me and the audience. And I'll say to the audience that those of you out there that say, and I hear this a lot, I don't like the taste of water. Learn to love water, because water loves you. And it really is very important to everything that you consume, and it's a complement to everything that you do. So I have to thank you, Dr. Said, and we're going to do more talk about the 7 steps, but water is important. Water is important. Don't think it doesn't taste good, but your body loves it. Okay, so you should love it back. It does good things. It makes everything else work right. But thank you again for coming to the show.
Thank you, Tony. And I just want to make one point. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons people often say, oh, water doesn't taste good, or they're not used to the taste of water, comes because of the fact that we are so used to flavored drinks and flavored beverages.
Sugared drinks,
that's right. If you've been drinking sodas and sugary drinks for many years, your body is used to things that come packed with sugar. And so when you give it something that does not have sugar, it almost feels or tastes like it's bitter. It's not the water that's doing anything wrong. It's your expectation of what beverages should taste like. And so I think if you're someone who happens to find the taste of water unpleasant, that's a sign that you may be addicted to sugar or sugary drinks. And so I would say that's more of a sign that you need to quit sugar or sugary drinks and focus on water more so than anything.
So everybody, be honest with yourself about this, and be honest with yourself about how much sugar you consume and how much sugar you drink. But I'm going to say hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Drink water, and you know what the good sources are? It's not soda. That doesn't count. So I'll say until next time, we'll have another session with Dr. Cedric, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here. Thanks for visiting, and until the next time, thank you very much, and be healthy, be well. Bye-bye.